The nights are long, the days are short, and the weather is chilly to downright cold, depending on where you are. It's a good time to slip into a Quince iconic Mongolian cashmere sweaters, which start at only $50. You can treat yourself to everyday luxury at an affordable price with Quince. If you really want to dive into luxury, you can check out their leather handbags, washable silk shirts, and European linen sheet sets. Whatever you're looking for at Quince, all the prices are 50 to 80% less than similar brands, and they do that by partnering directly with top factories and cutting out the middleman. They only work with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing processes. And of course, they use premium fabrics and finishes for that luxury feel in every piece. But you've already heard me rave about my Quince travel pants. Treat yourself this winter without the luxury price tag. Go to quince.com/traveler for 365-day returns plus free shipping on your order. That's QUINCE.com/traveler to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/traveler. And thanks to Quince for sponsoring this episode of Amateur Traveler.
This episode is brought to you by Amazon. Sometimes the most painful part of getting sick is the getting better part. Waiting on hold for an appointment, sitting in crowded waiting rooms, standing in line at the pharmacy, that's painful. Amazon One Medical and Amazon Pharmacy remove those painful parts of getting better with things like 24/7 virtual visits and prescriptions delivered to your door. Thanks to Amazon Pharmacy and Amazon One Medical, healthcare just got less painful.
Amateur Traveler, episode 900. Wow, 900. Today in Amateur Traveler, we talk about prosciutto and Parmesan, Ferrari and Ducati, Julius Caesar, and Fellini, as we go to the Italian region of Emilia Romagna. This is Chris Christensen from Amateur Traveler. Let's talk about Emilia Romagna. I'd like to welcome to the show Keith Jenkins from velvetescape.com, who's come to talk to us about a lesser-known region in Italy. Keith, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you, Chris, for having me.
I say lesser-known, probably lesser-known to Americans, but well-known in Europe. And where are we going to talk about?
Emilia Romagna. And it's actually, I think, considered lesser known in Europe as well. I think in Italy, when you talk about Italy, most people think of Tuscany and Venice, Florence, Rome, Milan. And the funny thing about that is that everyone knows Florence, everyone knows Venice, and everything in between those two cities is Emilia Romagna. So if you're traveling from one city to the other, you're definitely passing through Emilia Romagna. If I mention Bologna, that might ring a bell. Parma might ring a bell. These are the two most famous cities in the region of Emilia Romagna, which attract the most tourists as well, I think. If I say Ferrari, Lamborghini, Ducati, these are famous brands. They all come from Emilia Romagna. And if I say Parmigiano cheese, it comes from Emilia Romagna as well. And balsamico, famous balsamic vinegar, balsamico di Modena, that comes from Emilia Romagna as well. Yeah.
So you're saying it's the place that we love that we don't know we love yet.
Exactly, yeah. And it's an absolutely beautiful region. It's a pretty large region. If you're coming in from Milan, it's about an hour's drive to the northernmost border of Emilia Romagna. And then you have the city of Piacenza. And then the next one is Parma. So it's about an hour and a half drive from Milan. And then it stretches in the southeasterly direction to the coast, the Adriatic coast. So it's got the hills, the mountains, and right in the middle of the region is the broad plain of the Po River, which is the longest river in Italy. And it stretches out right down to the Adriatic Sea, and you've got a very long coastline, and the region is actually very famous for its beaches. Yeah.
Oh, okay. And I did not know that.
Yeah, especially for Northern Europeans, the beaches along the Adriatic coast are very popular, in the summer.
And why should someone go to Emilia Romagna?
Well, see, for actually all the things that I just mentioned, I think most people will know about the products that come from there, the food, or even the cars, maybe some of the cities, but they would just not associate that with the name Emilia Romagna. And we all know Parma, Bologna, but there's so much more to explore. And there's a large part of the region that's actually pretty off the beaten track, I would say, because you have all these little small medieval towns on the plains, also the hill towns, which are absolutely beautiful. And there's so much to explore. They've got huge forests and lakes and national parks and all that. So there's a lot of nature. So for me, that's my favorite combination: nature, old historic towns to explore, and great food. That for
Excellent.
me is what a Velvet Escape is.
Ah, okay. Then
There you go.
I was going to ask you where the name came from. Excellent.
Yeah.
And what itinerary are you going to recommend for us?
I actually do have an itinerary on my blog, which is actually like a 15-day thing, but you could do it in a week as
Okay.
well. There is this ancient Roman road that runs the entire length of the region. It starts in the northwest and it's called the Via Emilia.
Okay.
And this road, even during the Roman times, was a very important trunk route that led from the north of Italy down to Rome, Florence and Rome, but it branches off to the Adriatic Sea because there was a port there. There were numerous ports actually, which were very important for the Romans. And so it was a major trunk route. And these days, Via Emilia still exists, but it's obviously a major highway. But if you just go on a road trip from north, where it starts in Piacenza, right down to the Adriatic coast in Rimini, that you already give you a great idea about the region and all it has to offer.
Excellent.
Yeah,
And you
yeah,
mentioned it being a major center during the Roman times. Ravenna,
yes,
which of course is in
yes,
the region,
yeah,
was the capital of the Western Roman Empire during the 5th
correct.
century or so after the fall of Rome.
It's one of my favorite cities in Emilia Romagna. I was there actually last month. The city is famous for its mosaics, the Byzantine mosaics, and they have cathedrals there which date back to the second century AD. It's insane. And you walk in there and you see these huge mosaics which shimmer like they were made yesterday. It's
Mm.
absolutely mind-blowing. For me, that's obviously Ravenna's biggest attraction, and it's so worthwhile to go there. And obviously, Ravenna is close to the coast, so there are beaches as well. There are these big lagoons just north of Ravenna where you have these nature parks. There are a lot of flamingos and salt pans. And there's this small fishing town called Comacchio, which is like a little Venice. And the thing is, like Venice, it is built on several islands on the edge of a lagoon. And it is absolutely beautiful. And I was there just last month and there was hardly anyone there.
Hmm.
Or really not many people know about this place. And it's got all these little bridges and all that. It's like a simpler version of Venice, but it's so quaint, so picturesque. For me, it's just beautiful. Yeah.
Well, let's get back to your itinerary instead of the one that I
Yes,
was
sorry,
recommending.
just sidetracked there.
So
Yeah.
you started
So
us over in the northwest.
it really depends on where you arrive. So
Okay.
if you're planning a trip to Emilia Romagna, the gateway is Bologna. Bologna has the international airport. Unfortunately, there used to be seasonal flights in the summer from the US to Bologna, but they've stopped that now. So the easiest would be actually to fly into Milan or Rome and then take the train from there to Bologna or
Got it.
hire a car. If you're going to explore, personally, I would hire a car and just drive. You know, you've got the freedom of going where
Hmm.
you want to go and you can take your time. And the region is very well connected in terms of trains, but it's just, especially if you're going up to the hill towns and all that, it's just easier to have a car.
Okay.
Yeah, so I would start in Bologna, and you can make your way along the Via Emilia westerly direction towards Rimini,
Okay.
and Rimini is on the coast. And along the way, you will pass different towns like Sant'Angelo di Romagna, Faenza. You can pass Ravenna as well. And Rimini is actually very interesting. It's very famous as a beach city, a beach destination for Northern Europeans. But what I love about Rimini is its old town because it was actually built by the Romans. Yeah, it still has all these Roman monuments from before, like the Tiberius Bridge and the Arch of Augustus, which was built in the first century BC, if I'm not mistaken.
That would be
And
right. Yeah.
it is beautiful. I just absolutely love it. And then from Rimini,
Wait,
which is,
we're going to back up and
yeah,
do this a little more slowly. So you
okay,
started as in Bologna. What are we
yes.
doing in Bologna?
Okay, all right. I always like to leave Bologna as the last, but you can start with
Well,
Bologna as
you
well.
picked it, so you know.
Yeah, no,
Okay,
exactly.
so
That's true.
you're going to say fly into Milan, take the train down all the way then to Rimini, and we'll start there.
Okay. Let's start with okay, flying to Milan and then
Okay,
take the train down to Parma.
to Parma. Okay, got it.
Yes. I would spend a day, 1 or 2 days in Parma because it's an absolutely beautiful city. There's a lot to see there, like the cathedral is absolutely stunning, and a lot of great restaurants there as well. And you can just easily spend 1 or 2 days just exploring the city.
And in Parma, I know
In
I'm eating
Parma,
cheese, and I know I'm eating prosciutto.
ham. Yes, that's right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's very famous for that. And you can actually, from Parma, do little tours to the farmhouses where they produce the prosciutto, but also to the factories where they produce the cheeses.
And give me more information if someone wanted to do that. Someone says, "Hey, that sounds great, Keith."
Yeah.
Where would they go?
Okay, I would actually save all that for the next city.
You're gonna
Yeah.
be a challenge, I can tell. Okay.
Yeah. So from Parma, I would actually take the train down to the next city called Modena, right? And Modena, you can definitely spend 3 days there because Modena is in the heart of the agricultural region. So it's got all the food, it's all the automotive industry. So if you love cars, especially fast cars like Ferrari, Lamborghini. They're all headquartered in Modena. And Modena is a small city that's actually UNESCO World Heritage listed.
Okay.
Yeah, it's beautiful, but so it has this great combination of fast cars and incredible food. So in and around Modena, you have a lot of these farms where you can go to, and actually it's very easy to just go walk up to the tourist office in Modena and just pick up a couple of tours and
Okay.
and visit like a farm where they produce the prosciutto, or you could go to one of the cheese factories where they make Parmigiano Reggiano. One of my great favorite experiences in Emilia Romagna is actually visiting these cheese factories because they have these massive cheese libraries. I don't know if you've ever seen a photo of it, but it's like stacks of these wheels of cheese, which are
Yeah, yeah.
huge. And they're like, I don't know, 30 feet up. And it's just row after it's like a library. And it's all cheese.
I'm
It's
a fan
incredible.
of the recent Stanley Tucci series on eating his way through Italy, and this region stands out as one of those episodes where he went to one of the cheese libraries and these huge wheels of cheese.
Yes, it's amazing. And especially, it's quite an experience to actually see them cut open one of these wheels as well. It's a whole process. There are quite a few very specific tools and customs involved when you're opening one of these wheels.
Okay.
It's really interesting to see. Yeah. So
Well,
you can do all of
and you
that in Modena.
and you say the cars. I like cars, so I
Yes,
go to Modena. But then, how do I experience them? Can I get a factory tour? Is there a museum, or how, or do I
correct.
just watch them drive through town?
No. There were actually two things in Maranello. You have the Ferrari factory,
Got it.
and which you can also visit. And that's just outside of Modena. It's like literally 15 minutes. And there's a big, you can tour the grounds, you can tour the museum, and you can also take a Ferrari, you can book a tour to take a test drive on a racetrack in a Ferrari. Yes. Also an amazing experience, I can tell you. Yeah.
Okay.
And so there are basically
At
two
least
Ferrari
three
museums.
people
Yes.
just booked an airplane ticket right when you said that. So,
Yeah, it is an incredible experience. That's why I said in modern you can have these amazing experiences, especially if you
mhm.
love cars. Don't forget there's also Lamborghini. In Modena, so you have two Ferrari experiences which I really enjoyed. One is the
Mhm.
factory and where you can test drive, and there's a museum all in one place. And separate from that is the Casa Enzo Ferrari, I think it's called.
Yeah.
That's a separate museum, and that's where the founder of Ferrari actually lived and actually designed his first cars. And so it's a beautiful museum with all the old vintage Ferraris and
Okay.
also vintage race cars because they've got Mercedes cars in there as well and different types of cars. But these were all race cars. And it's absolutely beautiful to see. And that's also in Modena.
Okay.
And from there, from Modena, you can take the train down or drive down to Bologna. So that will be your next stop.
Okay.
And you can easily spend 2 or 3 days in Bologna as well. Bologna is this really big. It has a medieval city center, like the old town. So it's got a lot of medieval buildings, and everyone knows the Leaning Tower of Pisa.
Hmm.
Bologna has the Asinelli Tower, which is actually the tallest leaning tower in Italy. And there are actually two of them, and they're right next to each other, and they look as though they're leaning on each other. And it's one of the iconic monuments in the city. Bologna also has the oldest university in Europe,
Hmm.
and so it's a very lively, vibrant student city. And it's just great to walk around Bologna. When you walk around, the first things you notice are the rows and rows of arcades. They have these, what you call porticos or arcades,
Hmm.
which provide shade in the summer, but also from the rain. And these porticos are so beautiful. And a lot of them have frescoes and ceiling and paintings on the ceilings as well. And Bologna has got about 45 miles of these arcades in the
Oh
city.
my.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
That's also a great experience just walking through these arcades
And
and
you
exploring the city
mentioned
that
getting
way.
shade in the summer, and that usually
Yeah,
implies that if I'm there in the summer, it's going to be quite warm. When do you recommend is the best time to go to this region?
I would say in May, in June. May and
Okay.
June are great months to go, or the shoulder season in September. September, October are really good months as well. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I would actually try to avoid the summer months, like especially July, August, because it tends to get very hot. I was there last year in, let me see, was it? Yeah, in the summer. I'm not sure if it was in July. I think it was in late July, and it was very hot.
Hmm.
Yeah, not very pleasant, especially if you're exploring a big city like Bologna. So I would recommend going in the shoulder season, spring or autumn. Yeah. Bologna has also got a lot of museums, and it's just a great city. It's got such an electric vibe that you just have to experience. Every
Well, and you
Sunday,
you have museums. Do you have a favorite museum in Bologna?
not particularly because it's got a lot of these old churches there. I love the art in the churches, and a
Hmm.
lot of them have beautiful Gothic or Renaissance art. So I just love seeing that.
Do you have a favorite church that we can see the artwork in?
One of the churches I recommend visiting in Bologna is the Basilica of San Stefano. And what's really unique about this church is that it is a complex that comprises 7 churches. And it's all in one complex. It's really beautiful to see. Yeah. And one thing that I really love about Bologna as well is every Sunday, the historic city center, so the old town, turns into one big pedestrian zone.
Okay.
And yeah, so you get people walking around. There are little markets here and there. There's a big market on the Piazza Santo Stefano, which is a big antique market. And it's just lovely being there on a Sunday afternoon, just browsing around the antiques in this big square.
You
And
were
yep,
mentioning the churches, and I see that the oldest of the churches goes back. The originally one was in the fourth century, and there's one from the fifth century, and that's notable
correct.
because the oldest churches in the world only go back to the third century. There were no church buildings before that, so these are old.
These are very old, correct. Yeah. Yeah, I think you're talking about the cathedral at the Piazza Maggiore. Yes. Yeah. That's definitely one of the highlights as well. You can't miss it. Piazza Maggiore is the focal point in the city. It's
Hmm.
the biggest square, and you have the Neptune Fountain as well, which is also a very historic monument right next to the square. When you're visiting Bologna, definitely you'll start at the Piazza Maggiore.
Okay.
Yeah. What I love about the Piazza Maggiore as well is that around it you have the Quadrilatero district, which is like a small area of, it's like a maze of lanes and small streets, and it's
Okay.
packed with food shops and little markets and the restaurants. And it's really nice to go there in the evenings, especially around aperitivo, which is like the Italian happy hour time. If you get
Okay.
there about 5, 6 o'clock and just sit down and have a drink, and they'll bring you these little snacks and just people watch. It's beautiful. It's a great experience. So if you enjoy markets, I mentioned there are some markets in the Quadrilatero district
Hmm.
and just browsing around for food. But if you enjoy that and you love making pastas, Bologna is also a good place to do like a cooking course.
Oh, sure. We should say that for Italy, this is considered one of the most seminal regions for food.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
yes. And there's one small cooking class you can follow. It's called Le Sfogline. It's in the center of town, and it's run by these absolutely lovely people. And yeah, and it's just a great experience sitting down making pasta with them. They're very chatty and lively, and you just have a great time. And you make the pastas with them, and then you sit down and eat. And their cooking class, the studio where they have the class, faces this little square. And on the other side of the square is this market. And you basically, after you've done cooking and all that, you just basically sit outside on the tables. They have some rickety tables and chairs outside, and you sit there and you eat the food that you've just made and just enjoy the atmosphere in the square. It's absolutely lovely.
Excellent.
Ah, bon chien. Bonjour, je suis Theo, a tour leader with Explore, and this is Punti. He's helping us find truffles under the trees next to this beautiful vineyard. Maybe for tomorrow's cooking class? Oui, call it's semi-heure. Parfait. Semi-o'clock. Not everyone gets to enjoy a Bordeaux sunset this way, but you will if you explore. No, Punti. Search exploreworldwide.com and don't just travel. Explore.
And one other thing in Bologna, if you love motorbikes, you have to go to the Ducati Museum as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Ducati comes from there.
Excellent. Anything else we want to do in Bologna?
Oh gosh, there's so much. But yeah, eat ice cream, eat gelato.
Got it.
Yeah, lots of gelato in Bologna. You can't go wrong.
You don't have a favorite gelateria in Bologna? Or...
One of my favorite shops for gelato in Bologna is Cremeria Funivia. And it's at the Piazza Camillo Benso Cavour. And it's lovely. I just go crazy there. There's usually a queue, but it's so worthwhile standing in line for a while. Another one I can recommend is also the Cremeria Santo Stefano, which is very close by. Yeah, but there are quite a few of these gelato places in Bologna, and you really can't go wrong. No.
Excellent.
So Bologna is like the central rail hub in northern Italy. So from Bologna, if you're coming from Rome or Venice or Florence or Milan or wherever, they all pass through Bologna. And then from Bologna, you have this big rail network which crosses the entire region. So it's very easy from Bologna to make your way around the region. There's one line in particular which connects Bologna with Rimini on the coast.
Okay.
So if you stick to that line, you'll pass many of the cities that I've already mentioned. But there's one line from the north that connects Milan and Bologna. If you stick to that line, you'll already pass Parma and Modena. And from Bologna in a southeasterly direction to Rimini, you will then pass Ravenna, for instance. There's one line that goes to Ravenna and then down to Rimini.
Okay.
Yeah, so, it's very easy traveling by train. Yeah.
We
And
should also mention for country counters, when you're in Rimini, you're near another country because you're
yes,
only a few
correct.
miles
Yes.
from San Marino.
San Marino, that is correct. Yes, I was getting there. Yeah, Rimini is a great city to visit. I absolutely love Rimini. The beach is a big attraction, but for me, the old town is the biggest attraction. It's just great being there. It's those old Roman monuments. And there's even like a stone in the main square, which Julius Caesar actually stood on and gave a very famous speech to his army. After they just won this battle, he stood on this stone, and the stone is still there. Or so they say. That's the original stone. It's a good story. From Rimini, one
Oh,
great day trip you could do. is visit San Marino. So San Marino is one of the smallest countries in the world. It's actually, I think, the oldest republic in the world. And it's a 45-minute bus ride from Rimini. It's very easy to catch the bus there. And then you're in a different country. San Marino is actually a small country that's on the top of several hills.
Okay.
And so you can take the bus and go there and just wander around. Bring your passport with you because then you can get a stamp in your passport. There are no customs or immigrations, whatever. You have to actually go to, I think, the post office or the tourist office to get this special stamp in your passport. Yeah.
Well, and the post office would make sense because they are known for their stamps. I remember collecting
Correct.
San Marino stamps when I was a kid and had a stamp collection.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. And it's a great and easy way to chalk up another country on your number of countries visited list.
Yep. So going back just a little bit to Caesar, I did not catch when you talked about a famous speech that I know what speech you're talking about. This is when Caesar crosses the Rubicon.
Oh, okay.
And so we use that phrase for a decision you can't go back on because Caesar was not allowed to bring his army south of the Rubicon without being in
Yes,
revolt against the Senate. And this is basically when he
correct.
comes and claims power for the
Correct.
first time. So
Yes. So it was the Rubicon because
Mm.
that's where this battle took place. I think they crossed the
it's not,
bridge
not so
or
much a battle.
something
It's
in Rubicon.
he's bringing his army, his victorious army from having conquered Gaul, but he's bringing it back down to Rome, which he's not allowed to
Okay.
do. Basically,
Right.
by doing so, this is what led him to be emperor for a short period of time before he was killed. But
Right. Okay. So it wasn't a battle. Okay.
No.
All right. Okay. Thank you for that. There's even a statue of Julius Caesar there
Got it.
at that same square as well. And also, a really lovely area to visit in Rimini is, and to get there is a treat because you have to cross this 2,000-year-old bridge called the Ponte de Tiberius. And then you cross this bridge and you end up in this beautiful, very colorful neighborhood called the Borgo San Giuliano.
okay,
It's a very quaint neighborhood and it's famous because, do you know the legendary filmmaker Fellini?
Fellini, sure.
So he comes from Rimini. In the neighborhood, there's a lot of street art, a lot of murals and all that. And many of these murals have references to Fellini films, movies. Yeah. So it's really nice just walking around this neighborhood, Borgo San Giuliano, and having a look at these murals. But also, the houses and all that are just so colorful. And you have these little cobblestone streets, and it's very quaint. And from Rimini, you can go on a day trip to San Marino. You go up the coast to Ravenna, which is not very far away. I think it's about half an hour by train. And you could definitely spend a day or two in Ravenna. And if you have your own car, it's easier that way. You can make your way to this little fishing town I mentioned earlier called Comacchio. And I definitely recommend going there. It's beautiful. Along the way as well, you could stop in this other small town on the coast called Cesenatico, which is famous for its port. It has a yacht harbor and a port which was actually designed by Leonardo da Vinci. Yeah. So it's a cool place to walk around for an hour or two and see the colorful boats as well. Every year they have, I'm not exactly sure when it is, but there's a famous festival where they have this parade of these colorful boats from Cesenatico just going up and down the yacht harbor.
Interesting.
Yeah.
You put us in Ravenna, but we didn't talk too much about what we're doing in Ravenna.
All right. Okay. So, yeah, I love talking about Ravenna because it's one of my favorite cities in Emilia Romagna. Yes, yeah, Ravenna is a stunning city.
You mentioned the basilica there with the amazing Byzantine mosaics, but I don't think you mentioned what the name was.
San Vitale. Yeah. The biggest attraction in Ravenna is the Basilica of San Vitale.
Okay.
And it is a huge basilica. It's just jaw-dropping beautiful. From from the outside, it doesn't look like very much, but
Right. It's more
as
of a
soon as you walk
Romanesque
in,
style church, so fairly plain
yeah, you
compared to
walk
the later.
plain on the
Yeah.
outside. Correct, yeah. And you walk in
Oh
and
my.
you see these amazing mosaics. It is stunning. Yeah. So Ravenna actually has, let me see, how many do they have? I believe there are eight UNESCO World Heritage Monuments in Ravenna.
Oh my.
Eight, yeah. And this in this small city, yeah. So you have the Basilica of San Vitale,
Hmm.
and then next door to it, which is you can buy a ticket and it covers both of them. Is also another UNESCO World Heritage Monument, which is the Mausoleum of Galla Placidia. And it's a very small chapel, it's a mausoleum, and the mosaics are absolutely stunning. Yeah. You can buy a ticket actually, which covers five of the eight UNESCO World Heritage Monuments,
Okay.
and which are all famous for their mosaics. And then there are three others which are just slightly outside the city center. Two of them are, and then one is a little bit further in Classe, which is in a village about 15-minute drive outside the city.
What are the three that are out of town?
So you have the Basilica of San Vitale and the Mausoleum of Galla Placidia, and
Hmm.
then you have the Neonian Baptistry, which is beautiful. It is perhaps my favorite because the mosaics on the dome are just breathtaking.
Okay.
And then you have the Basilica of Sant'Apollinare Nuovo, that's also in the city center.
Hmm.
And you have the Arian Baptistry, it's also in the city
Hmm.
center. And then you have the Archiepiscopal Chapel. Is that? I think it's at the edge of the city center. Then you have the Mausoleum of Theodoric, which I know is just outside the city center. And then you have the Basilica of San Apollinare in Classe, which is in a village about a 15-minute drive away
Okay.
from the city. Yeah. So these are the eight UNESCO monuments, UNESCO World Heritage Monuments in Ravenna. Yeah.
Interesting, the Mausoleum of Theodoric, because that would be the king of the Ostrogoths, the Goths who
Yes.
came in and took over.
Gosh, so much for that than yeah. It is just an amazing experience to see the mosaics. I've seen them many times and you'll never get tired of seeing them. It's just so awe-inspiring.
Hmm. And then the other thing that you mentioned is that the area is known for its beaches, and it didn't sound like you were as much a beach person as some, but is there a
Yeah.
particular beach that you would recommend? Now, we're talking about Italian beaches, so I'm picturing rows and rows of umbrellas and chaise lounges that I can rent and predominantly paid beachfront.
That is about correct, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of beaches. I enjoy beaches,
Hmm.
but if I'm traveling in Italy and I just want to see places and all that, I'll probably just set aside a day for a beach and that would be enough for me. But yeah, Ravenna is close to the coast and there are several beaches there which are definitely worth going to. Actually, the whole coast. There are several beach towns. So if you're looking the very south, you have Rimini, and then up the coast from there, you have Milano Marittima, which is a very popular beach town, especially for the people from Milan. I think that's also why it's called Milano Marittima. It
Oh,
is
that.
Milan on sea. Yeah. It's a pretty trendy place. So you have these trendy beach clubs and all that. And the beach, it's the Adriatic coast is just like almost one long stretch, unbroken stretch of sand.
Hmm.
Yeah, and it's a pretty wide beach as well. So you have, especially in the beach towns like Rimini, and also in Ravenna, you have these beach clubs with the typical kind of what you just mentioned, rows and rows of chaise lounges and beach umbrellas. Yeah.
Okay.
But I really enjoyed Milano Marittima, and then next door to it, just down the road, you have another beach town called Cervia. And Cervia is very interesting because it has a historic town center as well. And next door to that town, you have the Cervia salt pans, which produce some of the best salt in the world,
Hmm.
they say. But I have tasted it, and it's really cool to go on a walking tour around the salt pans because you actually taste the salt and they explain to you the different kinds of salts and you know how each salt tastes differently. So
Hmm.
that's a very interesting tour to do from Cervia. And Cervia also has some of the best mussels I've ever had.
Okay.
And it all comes from the little lagoons just around the town.
The other question I have for you is you mentioned that when we were further earlier on in your itinerary, when we were in Modena, we were going to talk to the tourism board and we were going to get some recommendations for going up to the Parmesan production and some of the farms and things. Are there any other places that you would recommend we go up into the mountains?
Yes. One of my favorite hill towns, there are many hill towns.
Right.
So let me say from a geographic perspective, you have the Apennines, which is a mountain range, which basically is the border between Tuscany and Emilia Romagna. And so along that mountain range, you have lots and lots of little hill towns and castles. There are several I can recommend, but it's a long stretch of mountain range to cover. So starting at the north, there's this town called Bobbio, which is absolutely beautiful. It's near Parma.
Okay.
And you can go to Bobbio as a day trip from Parma if you have your car. And there's also a town nearby called Torre Chiara, which is a really big castle up on a hill as well. And it's got a small village attached to it. That's really beautiful to see. But one of my favorite hill towns is, I have two actually. They're closer to Rimini. One is called Brisighella, and it's absolutely quaint. I just love it. It has this little castle, and it's got this clock tower and these little towers, just like it's a hillside town, and it's very quaint, very picturesque. And then you have another hill town called San Leo, which I was there just last month, and it's absolutely lovely. It's a small town with a really imposing, really big fortress up on a hill facing the town. Yeah. And that's a great town to visit. And another one which is close to San Leo is Sant'Agata. And that's also a beautiful hill town to visit.
And then you also mentioned national parks.
You have north of Ravenna is the Po River Delta.
Yeah.
The Po is the longest river in Italy. The whole delta area is one big national park. So there's a lot of bird life. I think you could rent a boat, but you could also hike in the park. There are a lot of waterways, so perhaps a boat tour would be a better choice to see a lot of bird life. And it's an estuary, so there's a lot of areas where, especially on the side, on the edges of the national park, there's a lot of small, very local fishing and mussel industries. Yeah.
Okay.
Mussel and oysters. Yeah.
Excellent. You mentioned food again, so we're going to get our Parmesan cheese, our prosciutto ham. Are there other dishes that you would recommend we try? You mentioned the mussels, other things that we should eat while we're in this region.
Yeah, there's a lot of pasta.
Sure.
Obviously. What to eat. In Ravenna, there's this very famous restaurant called Ca Ven. And it's a historic restaurant. It's really beautiful. And it is famous for its Romagna cuisine. And one of the dishes that I really like ordering at Ca Ven is cappelletti.
Okay.
So it's a type of pasta, and you can order it in different versions. I love it al ragu. So talking about ragu leads me to another interesting thing about Emilia Romagna. Everyone knows spaghetti bolognese.
Sure.
One of the things that you definitely should not do in Emilia Romagna is order spaghetti bolognese.
But it's from there.
It doesn't exist.
Oh, no.
Yes. Yeah, it's really strange because then they'll tell you it's an American invention.
Huh.
So you have pasta al ragu or tagliatelle. So the meat sauce is called ragu.
Okay.
And it's not served with spaghetti, it's served with tagliatelle. So you have tagliatelle al ragu, or in Ravenna you can get a cappelletti al ragu. You'll never get spaghetti bolognese. No.
Huh.
If you do see a restaurant serving spaghetti
Don't
bolognese,
go.
you'll know it's for tourists.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I
Yes.
did not know that.
So yeah, I've spoken a lot about Emilia Romagna, haven't I? Yeah.
But you have been more than once, we should point out.
Oh yeah.
How many
Well,
times
yeah,
do you know? How many times you've been there?
Countless. Definitely more than 20 times for
Okay.
sure. Yeah.
And obviously on Velvet Escape, which is Keith's blog, there are many blog posts. We'll link to at least one or two of them as we go over there. Anything else, though, you want to make sure we highlight before we get to some of our wrap-up questions?
I think that's about it. There's so much to see and do in Emilia
Mm-hmm.
Romagna, so I would actually try to take my time exploring. I've been there, as I said, definitely more than 20 times, and there's still so much more to see. If
Mm-hmm.
you don't have that much time, say if you have a week, then I would start with the highlights like Parma, Bologna,
Okay.
Ravenna, and Modena, obviously, and definitely, and maybe one or two of the hill towns as well, and focus on that, and then come back, do the rest later. There's really, yeah, so much. Yeah.
Excellent. As we go to wrap this up, you're standing in the prettiest spot in the whole region. Where are you standing and what are you looking at?
Wow, that's a good one. I would say, okay, yes, one of my favorite towns is Brisighella.
Okay.
And there's this hiking path that goes up the mountain behind the town. So the town is on a hillside and the mountain goes further up. And there's this hiking path that goes up. And just walking up that mountain, hiking up that mountain, and then looking down at the town with its little castle and the clock tower and all that. And you can do it either in the early morning hours or at around sunset. And it's absolutely spectacular. That is so beautiful. That's definitely one of my favorite parts in Emilia Romagna
Excellent.
for
And I
sure.
will link to Keith's post on Brisighella. One thing that makes you laugh and say only in Emilia Romagna.
Okay, yes, I was in
Mm-hmm.
Modena once, and I wasn't even sure if it was a festival or something, but I was just sitting having a cappuccino out on the terrace, and there's this parade of Ferraris passing by, literally. And I'm just like, what on earth is going on here? And those cars just, these are $1 million cars just going down these cobblestone streets making a lot of noise. And it was hilarious. Yeah, one thing I will never forget.
Excellent. And if you had to summarize the entire region in just 3 words, what 3 words would you
In,
choose?
wow, just 3 words. That is hard. Indulgent,
Oh, good word.
definitely one
Okay.
of them. I love the historic aspects
Okay.
of it, so I would say
Mm-hmm.
historical. Yeah. And the people are just so friendly as well. Yeah, just warm, just very warm, friendly people.
Excellent. Our guest again has been Keith Jenkins from velvetescape.com. So I think I have a better idea what a Velvet Escape now is. So we've got some good food and we've got some cultural depth to it, is what I'm getting.
Yeah,
Excellent.
sweet. That's cool. Yeah, getting out of our daily routines, taking a break and immersing ourselves in a different culture and just enjoying life as we should.
Excellent. And if we wanted to send people to your best post on Emilia Romagna, where are we going to send them?
I have a guide called Driving the Via Emilia, which is this ancient Roman road you can follow. And it's a road trip that covers pretty much the entire region. And I would send people
Okay.
there because it also links out to all my other content about Emilia Romagna.
Excellent. I'll put a link to that in the show notes. Keith Jenkins, thanks so much for coming on Amateur Traveler and sharing with us your obvious love for the region of Emilia Romagna.
Thank you so much, Chris, for having me. And it was a great pleasure, a lot of fun to talk about Emilia Romagna. And I can't stop talking about it. Yeah, it's been a great, fun time for me. So thank you so much.
This is, in fact, episode 900 of Amateur Traveler, and 10 days after this episode comes out will be the 19th anniversary of Amateur Traveler. As we start the 20th year, I'd like to thank the patrons of the show who help support Amateur Traveler, both emotionally and financially. Had a great meeting, though, monthly Zoom call we did with them just last week. If you're interested in learning more about what you get if you're a patron of the show or how you can support the show, go to patreon.com/amateur traveler. The other interesting thing that's happening to me is that within 5 days after this show comes out, I'll be retiring from the day job. And I do want to clarify something, because some people thought I was retiring from the podcast or from the podcasts that I do and the blog. And no, I'm retiring to them, not from them. I plan to be doing, if anything, more amateur traveler. One idea that I have, and I'd be interested in your feedback, is I'm thinking about what I'm calling more travel episodes, which would be more of the how episodes, how to travel, how to do night trains in Europe or something like that. There would be thematic episodes. And I'm thinking of doing those on this same feed and probably halfway through the week, and not necessarily 2 episodes a week, but maybe something like 6 episodes a month, with 4 of them being the usual destination episodes and maybe a couple how episodes. I'd be curious what you think about that. And if you like the idea, what you think we ought to have as topics for those episodes. With that, we're going to end this episode of Amateur Traveler. If you have any questions, send an email to host@amateurtraveler.com, or better yet, leave a comment on this episode at amateurtraveler.com. And thanks so much for listening.